Hi, this is lecture number 2 on JavaScript, and I'm going to begin by looking at the program that we were working on yesterday. And if you recall, I provided you with the file that I demonstrated. The name of the file is tempconversion er1.htm. I made this available to you in week 2 on Moodle, and you were to do a bug fix and then write one of the 2 functions. I wrote one of the functions, and you were to write the second function, which would be very similar to what I did in function number 1. Okay, so the current state of this file and the state that it's in as it was given to you on Moodle is this. If I open this in the browser, then what I would expect to have happen when this thing is working correctly is if I put in a Fahrenheit value, it should convert it to the corresponding Celsius value. So if I put in something like 212, it would convert it to a Celsius value of 100. If I put in a Celsius value of 0, then this should second button should call up a JavaScript function that would convert the Celsius value 0 to a Fahrenheit value of 32. So when I actually run this program, nothing happens here, nothing happens here. Okay. So what's wrong with the program? Well, there's a bug in it, and you really ought to fix the bug first. Here's what the problem is. So if you're stumped, here's the problem. If I open this with an editor, I could use Expression Web or Notepad. I'll just use Notepad. It opens a little more quickly. And I'm going to expand the size of the window. Then look down through the program code. So you see the beginning doc type tag and everything's pretty familiar stuff down through the script tag. If you look at the first JavaScript function here, there's the function header. It's going to receive some data. When the function gets called up, it receives data through this parameter. There's a variable being declared that will be used as the target of an assignment statement when a calculation is performed, and that calculation involves taking whatever value the user has typed in, which is then sent to the parameter when the function is called up. It takes that Celsius value, performs a arithmetic operation which converts it to the corresponding Fahrenheit value, and then the function is to fire off a message by way of an alert box that concatenates the parameter value to a string literal, to the calculated value, to another string literal. It's supposed to display that entire concatenated string, but it doesn't seem to work, and the reason it doesn't work is because there's a missing right parenthesis. Okay, so something as seemingly insignificant as a missing right parenthesis is wreaking havoc on this program. Okay, so it encountered a syntax error which it was not able to recover from, and the long and short of it is it caused both functions not to work properly. When it encountered the syntax error, I believe what happened in the language translation was that it didn't realize the end of this statement, and therefore didn't realize the end of the function. And then, since it didn't realize that this function had ended, it didn't realize that this was the legal beginning of another function, so the problem just, began to mount. And so I have dealt with the debugging problem by very carefully looking through the program code, finding this, syntax problem here, correcting it. I'm going to save it in Notepad. I'm going to close up out of Notepad, out of my editor, and I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to open with a browser. And now, if I put in a Fahrenheit value of 32 and click here, it should tell me the corresponding Celsius value is 0. And if I put in a Celsius value of 100 and click here, it should tell me the corresponding Fahrenheit value is 212. And this is the part of the program that you have to develop. So when I click here, you're just getting this initial message. That's the way I delivered it to you. And when I click here, it should get that concatenated string, and again telling me that 100 degrees Celsius is equal to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So now it's working properly, and all that I needed to do to make this thing work was to fix that one closing parenthesis. So hopefully that's helpful, and now I'm ready to move on to a variation on this program. And I'm going to navigate over here to another folder, and I'm going to open with a browser. And you'll notice that the form looks a little bit different this time. I'm actually using a table down here that has 2 rows and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. And I'm embedding some of these graphical user interface controls, text boxes and buttons. I'm embedding them in a table along with also embedding the messages that correspond with them, the text messages that correspond with them. So when I run this program, if I enter a Fahrenheit value of 212 and a Celsius value of, let's see, what would be a good one, a 0, then when I click here, I get that same message because same thing, I'm going to make this file available to you, or I'm going to make one with errors in it available to you. You'll have to fix the errors, and then you're going to have to make a change. You're going to have to write a function. You're going to have to make a change to the program code that I give you. And much like the other one, when I click this button, it's fully developed, and it tells me then that the calculated value is 32. So what's different about this? Well, one of the things, the major thing that's different about this is that I am taking the calculated values that I derive in the JavaScript function, and instead of having the JavaScript function display the resulting computation through an alert box, I instead have the JavaScript function assign the calculated value back to the HTML form. So the JavaScript needs to talk to the HTML in the process here, and we'll see how that's done. The other thing I've added here is a reset button so that if I click it, it clears out all the text boxes. A third JavaScript function has been written, and it contains the program code that clears out all the text boxes and then places the cursor inside of the first text box to receive a value, and that way the user can enter in more than one set of data. They can clear out the data in between inputs. Okay, so let's see how this is working, and I'm going to close the browser. I'm going to open this in Notepad. How's that? I'll open with Notepad and enlarge the window here. Okay, so routine code down to this point. Once we get to the script section, I've added a number of comment statements. Remember, these are non-executable statements, so I can put anything I want to in there. And I've chosen to document the program with who wrote it and with the major features that are being demonstrated in the program code. So, 6 months from now, when you're sitting around Christmas vacation, bored out of your minds, thinking about the many wonderful times you had watching these videos, you can always, get out this program or something and read through the documentation and entertain yourself. So I have the documentation in here using comment statements, and you'll notice that I inserted those comment statements, which are JavaScript, inside of the script section, but outside of any function. Okay, and that's perfectly legal. Anything in the script section can be JavaScript. Okay, these comment statements do not have to be inside of the function in order to be legal. All right, so what else do we have going on? Well, if we take a look at the function that is fully developed, it's the one that converts from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So in the function header, I see that the header begins again with the keyword function written in lowercase, followed by a verb-like descriptive name that describes what action the function performs. In this case, it's going to do a conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit. And then within parentheses, known as the parameter list, I have one parameter, and that's going to be a value that is passed from an argument in the method call, and it's going to be, that argument in the method call is going to be actually the contents of a text box that the user fills in when they run the program. Okay, so that should be pretty clear to you. So the function begins and ends in this block. Block begins with an opening brace, and then I declare a variable called var. Var is an example of what's known as a local variable. It has a lifetime and a scope that is tied to this function. So that variable can retain a value so long as that function is active. As soon as the function ends, that variable is no longer in existence, no longer exists in memory. So it has a lifetime that's limited to the lifetime of the function, and it also has a scope that is restricted to the function, which is to say that the variable var that I'm declaring right here can be referenced anywhere from this opening brace to this closing brace, but if some other function references a variable named var, it is not the same variable. It will be another memory location. And variables that have a scope and a lifetime that's restricted to the function and the function's lifetime are known as local variables. Okay, so I declare a local variable named var, and then I take whatever the user has, sent to this parameter when they filled in the text box and it was captured as an argument, and then the argument was used in the method call, in the function call. Then this value that originated in the text box is going to be used as a numeric value in this formula. And so it does the standard calculation for converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, and does that calculation using an assignment statement. And again, the assignment statement is always written with the expression on the right side of the assignment operator, and the assignment operator is the equal sign. And the target location, the location that receives the final value that results, is going to be a memory location called var. And then this is the code that you saw demonstrated in the previous video where I output by way of an alert, but this time I'm going to be outputting not by way of an alert statement, but rather having the JavaScript function assign the output to a text box on the form. And so on the form there is a text box called var output, and anything that is stored in that text box is its value property. So this essentially, this much reads the contents of the text box var output. Think of it that way. And again, because JavaScript is outside of the form section, much like if I want to call someone outside of my local area code, I have to explicitly specify the area code. You can think of that reference to the form as being almost like a reference to an area code. Now, you haven't seen it. We're not going to do it in this class, but it's possible to have multiple forms within a web page. And in that case, then I have to be very specific about the form that I'm talking about. And so in order in the JavaScript, which is outside of the form section, any of the form sections, the JavaScript must fully qualify the text box names by specifying the form name, dot, name of the text box, and then dot value indicates the contents of. I'm assigning whatever that computed value is in my variable in that memory location that was used here. I'm going to assign that newly computed value to the contents of the text box named far output in the form named convert form. And that's how I get my JavaScript to put values back into the form. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And then I want to show you I have, again, a function that you will have to write. You're going to have to rewrite your function from Project 1, except you're going to design it so that it writes back to the form, so it won't take much. And then I also have a third function, another function that I've added you haven't seen before, called clear form. And so one of the things that I want the program to be able to do is to erase everything in all the text boxes and then be able to put the cursor in whichever text box would be likely the first one that the user would want to reuse. So if the user wants to provide several sets of data, run the program with several different inputs, then they can clear out the form in between each set of inputs. And this function is how it works. And what you'll see is very simple. I just have 4 assignment statements. I have 4 text boxes in the form. I have 4 assignment statements. And for each of the text boxes, I assign my expression here. I assign what's called an empty string. Now, again, I want to try to familiarize you with a certain vocabulary. In programming terminology, a non-numeric value is known as a string, okay? And this represents a zero-length string, or sometimes called an empty string. So if I just strike the double quote key followed immediately by the double quote key, double quote, I create an empty string, literal, or a zero-length string. And I'm assigning that empty string to the contents of a text box named cell output in a form named convert form. And then I do the same kind of thing, assign an empty string to another text box in the form, do it again, do it 3-4 times, okay? And as soon as I have cleared out all the text boxes, the ones that I get user input in, the ones that I have my JavaScript write the converted value to, once I clear out all the text boxes, then the last thing I do is direct the program to insert the cursor into, and I specify the text box named far input. So one of those text boxes are named far input, and it's going to be receiving the cursor. And I do that again by specifying the name of the form, the text box on the form, except this time I'm calling up a pre-written method in JavaScript called focus. Okay, so when the language JavaScript was created, the developers created a number of built-in functions or methods, and one of the built-in functions is a function called focus, and focus has the effect when it's used with a text box like this, has the effect of putting the cursor into the text box. Okay, it has slightly different effect when I use it with a button, but with a text box, it has the effect of putting the cursor inside of that text box, making that text box immediately ready to receive data. So that's kind of a convenience for the user. Once the form's cleared out, they don't then have to, click the mouse in the text box. The JavaScript just automatically puts the cursor right where it needs to be, and the user can simply begin immediately typing in input. Okay, so now let's take a look at things down here in the form section. Okay, form section begins here. This is where my graphical user interface is created, and I did it using a table. So I'm wrapping everything up in a table so that I have nice, clean row column alignment. And so I have 2 rows and 5 columns on each row. And in the first column of row 1, I have a message that says Fahrenheit. In the second, the second row, I have a text box where I intend to capture the user's input that represents a Fahrenheit value. In the third column, I have a button, and this is the button that's going to call up a particular JavaScript function, and it's going to use as an argument the value that is stored in the input or in the text box named var input. So user's input then is used as an argument, and when this JavaScript method gets called up, then var input will be assigned to the method's parameter, and that's how the method, or the JavaScript function as it's really known, is going to receive the data that it needs to convert. And so I have yet a fourth column in that table in the first row that says Celsius equivalent, and then I have as a fifth column a text box where the JavaScript function will eventually write a converted value. So that final text box there is going to get its value not from user input, but rather from the program doing the calculation, and then assigning that computed value back to convert form dot cell output. Okay, so if you understand how that works, you should be able to understand how this works. And let's look here. All that is wrapped up in a table, and then outside of the table I throw in a break tag, and I put in one final input HTML input statement, and this is one that uses a type attribute value of button. So I'm going to create a command button. I will name it button 3 in case I need to reference that later on. And the value is set to reset. So on a button, the value attribute is the text that will appear on the button face, the caption. And then finally, I have wired into that button a event handler, an on-click event handler, and it calls a method named clearForm. And clearForm is a function that is being called without having any data passed to it. So the argument list here is empty, and if you look at the parameter list for clearForm, the parameter list is empty as well. Okay, so run it one last time, and hopefully I've made this clear. So when I close this and run it now, I'll put in some values that we can easily compute. So a Fahrenheit value of 212 will correspond with a Celsius value of 100, and a Celsius value of 0 will correspond with a Fahrenheit value of 32. And if I click here, it tells me you're going to do it. And if I click here, it tells me that the corresponding Fahrenheit value is 32. And then if I click the reset button, it clears everything out and places the cursor here in this text box. So there you have it. I'm going to provide you with a file here in Moodle here just momentarily, this file. And what's different about this file? It's the same thing that I've demonstrated with, but just like yesterday, it's got some bugs in it. And I want you to have the opportunity to try to debug these programs, because there's a great deal that you'll learn if you're able to go through that process. Okay, and finding these bugs is not necessarily an easy thing, and so do the best you can, and then I suspect in a subsequent video I will go ahead and show you the solution to this problem. I'll show you the bug fix. Okay, that's it. Expect to see this on Moodle, and I'll set up not only a file object so you can get a copy of this, but I'll also set up an assignment object with a due date. Make sure you hit those target due dates. Okay, that's it. Thanks.